The rise of the eagle, the Aztec Empire, ascending from the swamp, 14th, 15th century. The blazing sun of the Mexican highlands scorched the thin air. Somewhere, over the vast Lake Texcoco, the shadow of a bird circled slowly. Then it swooped down its wide wings, casting a shadow over a small patch of land rising from the brackish swamp. There, a scraggly cactus stood tall, clinging tenaciously. On the thorny top of the cactus, the majestic eagle landed its sharp beak, tearing apart a writhing snake. That was the sign promised long ago by the god Ahuitzotl, the god of war and the sun, also their patron deity during arduous journeys. The Mexica, the despised wanderers, had finally found the promised land to build their eternal home. The year was 1325, and from this deadly, swampy land, the seed of one of the most powerful and complex empires in pre-Columbian America, the Aztec Empire began to sprout. The outcasts and the divine promise. The journey to Texcoco was not easy. The Mexica, a tribe of the Nahua group, migrating from the north, which they called Aztlan Place of the Herons. The origin of the later name Aztec had endured centuries of wandering. They were the latecomers, the outsiders in a valley of Mexico, already crowded with powerful city-states like Texcoco on the lake shore or Culhuacan on the mainland. Despised, driven away, they had to live in barren lands, even spending a long period enslaved to. Culhuacan legend tells that the brutality of the Culhua forcing the Mexica to sacrifice one of their princesses caused them to flee, once again adrift on Lake Texcoco, until the god Huitzilopochtli showed them the sign of the eagle and the princesses. Cactus, Tenochtitlán, a miracle in the swamp. The designated settlement site was a geographical disaster. 2 small islands full of mud, salt, water. No arable land, surrounded by hostile city-states watching closely, but with an iron will, intense religious devotion, and astonishing technical ingenuity. The Mexica turned adversity into opportunity. Conquering the swamp Chinampas technique, the biggest challenge was food. Their solution was Chinampas, miraculous floating gardens. They wove large mats from reeds and branches, anchoring them firmly to the shallow lake bottom with wooden stakes. On top, they piled the fertile mud dredged from the lake bottom, mixed with decaying vegetation. These artificial land strips were surrounded by narrow canals, allowing easy boat access. Crop roots, corn beans, squash flowers, fruit trees plunged deep into the water, constantly absorbing nutrients. The canal system provided natural irrigation and temperature regulation. Chinampas transformed the swamp into incredibly fertile terraced fields, capable of up to 7 harvests a year, becoming the solid food foundation. Laying the foundation. They began by erecting a small reed temple on the very spot where the eagle landed, dedicated to Huitzilopochtli. This was the spiritual center, later developing into the colossal Templo Mayor Great Temple from this center. The city was planned along 4 main directions, divided into 4 large districts. Campan, each subdivided into neighborhoods. Calpulli, functioning as administrative, residential, religious, and educational units. For lineages, causeways, built of earth, stone, and wood, ran lengthwise and crosswise, dividing the city into neat squares, interspersed with a dense network of canals, like water streets. Timeless construction techniques. To expand the area and stabilize the weak ground, the Mexica drove thousands of large wooden pilings into the lake bed as foundations. They transported volcanic stone from afar by boat, meticulously shaping it, to build public structures, temples, and palaces. They constructed massive stone dikes up to 16-kilometer long to prevent the salty waters of Lake Texcoco from flooding the freshwater area to the southwest and to control floods. They dug a long, embanked aqueduct, bringing fresh water from springs at Chapultepec to the city, and built a complex tidal conduit system. The city rose from the lake like a miracle of engineering and organization. Rapid growth and alliance formation. 15th century. Under the leadership of talented and decisive Tlatoani, he who speaks sovereign, Tenochtitlán grew ceaselessly. Ahuitzotl reigned approx 1372 to 1391. The first Tlatoani of noble origin, mother was Kulwa, father was Mexica. He consolidated the power structure, established a de facto hereditary monarchy, and strengthened relations with neighboring city-states, especially Culhuacan. He commissioned the first stone buildings, laying the groundwork for future grandeur. Ahuitzotl, 1391 to 1415, and Chimalpopoca, 1415 to 1426. Continued a clever diplomatic policy, primarily submitting to the powerful Tepanec city-state of Azcapotzalco in exchange for protection and autonomy. Tenochtitlán gradually grew wealthy through trade and taxes. However, this submission felt humiliating to many Mexica. Ahuitzotl, 1427 to 1440, architect of the empire. The arrogance and oppression of Azcapotzalco peaked under Maxtla. Ahuitzotl, a military and strategic genius, saw the opportunity had come. He did a deed that changed destiny. Founded the Triple Alliance Ixcan Tlatoani with Texcoco, under the philosopher King Nezahualcóyotl and Tlacopan, a small but important Tepanec city-state. In 1428, the alliance launched the War of Liberation. After a bloody but brilliantly successful military campaign, Azcapotzalco fell 1428. This was the great turning point. Complete independence. Tenochtitlán broke free from domination. Division of spoils rights to collect tribute and benefits from conquered lands were shared, but Tenochtitlán held the largest share and the leadership role. Consolidation of power. Ahuitzotl undertook a burning of the books, likely codices on animal skin or amate paper, not to destroy knowledge, but to rewrite history, erasing the slave past and asserting the divine right and noble status of the fist. Mexica since creation. He built the first massive stone Great Temple and many other public works. Territorial expansion. The alliance began its first campaigns of conquest outside the Valley of Mexico, expanding its sphere of influence and sources of tribute. The Golden Age. Moctezuma I and the expansion, 1440 to 1469. Succeeding Ahuitzotl was Moctezuma, Ilhuicamina, Moctezuma, the angry lord, he who shoots arrows into the sky. He embodied the strength and ambition of the rising empire. Unprecedented territorial expansion under Moctezuma. His brilliant military command, the alliance, especially Tenochtitlán, intensified conquests in all directions. The Aztec army, comprising elite jaguar and eagle warriors and common forces, swept out like a storm. They conquered vast lands in Morelos Guerrero down to the Gulf Coast and eastward. Each conquered land had to pay periodic tribute: food, corn beans, precious cacao beans, cloth, precious feathers for cloaks and headdresses, animal skins, gemstones, amber gold, and human beings for sacrifice. Tribute flowed into Tenochtitlán like rivers, feeding the giant city and consolidating the power of the nobility, pipiltin, and priesthood. Building the capital. With immense resources from tribute and labor, Moctezuma I transformed Tenochtitlán into a metropolis unprecedented in Mesoamerica. The great Templo Mayor expanded and rebuilt on a colossal scale. It became the cosmic center of the Mexica. The twin towers atop honored the war god Huitzilopochtli and the rain god Tlaloc, the site of larger-scale sacrificial rituals to feed the sun, ensure the universe is functioning, and guarantee continuous victory. The Royal Palace, Teocalli, a vast architectural complex with hundreds of rooms including residences, council chambers, treasuries, a zoo, exotic botanical gardens, even saltwater and freshwater ponds to hold aquatic species from across the place. Empire. This was the supreme symbol of the Tlatoani's power, the great market of Tlatelolco. Initially, an independent twin city-state on a neighboring island, Tlatelolco was soon annexed by Tenochtitlán and became its largest, busiest market. Daily tens of thousands gathered trading everything from essentials to luxuries from all over Mesoamerica. Officials closely monitored transactions and collected taxes. Perfect infrastructure. Wide streets, sturdy stone bridges connecting to the mainland, especially the Great Southern Causeway to Iztapalapa and Coyoacán, a dredged and expanded canal system, sophisticated water management. The city became resplendent with whitewashed temples, brightly painted palaces, lush gardens and bustling activity day and night. Social and religious reforms. Moctezuma. I solidified the social hierarchy. The priesthood and nobility Pipiltin held supreme power. The merchants, Pocteca spies and traders had a special status. Artisans, Tolteca, were esteemed peasants, and fishermen Machahualtin were the main labor force, and at the bottom were slaves, Tlacotin. He also strengthened the religious system, elevating Huitzilopochtli's role and expanding sacrificial rituals as an absolute necessity to maintain cosmic and imperial stability. Laws were codified and strictly enforced. Population explosion and growing complexity. Abundant food from Chinampas, wealth from tribute and trade, and its central power status caused Tenochtitlán's population to explode. Estimated by the mid-15th century, the city's population exceeded 200,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in the world at that time, comparable to Constantinople or Paris. This massive population concentration demanded sophisticated urban management. The Kalpuli system functioned efficiently as small self-governing units, managing everything from education, Kalmakak schools for nobles, Telposhkali for commoners, religion, tax collection, to mobilizing labor, for public works and soldiers, security and sanitation. A police force, Tiakahuan kept order, a waste disposal, and public sanitation system surprisingly emphasized, kept the crowded city relatively clean, minimizing disease, though famines and epidemics still occurred, like the Great Famine of 1450 to 1454 caused by drought, extreme religious demand. The large population and incessant conquests made the need to feed the sun god Huitzilopochtli with precious water. Human blood increasingly urgent in their religious worldview. Flower wars Ahuitzotl were waged, not only to expand territory, but also to capture sacrificial prisoners, reaching an unprecedented scale. Succession and continued expansion. Ahuitzotl, 1469 to 1481, and Tizoc, 1481 to 1486. After Moctezuma's death, his son Ahuitzotl Watermask ascended. He continued the expansionist policy, particularly westward, conquering the Toluca city-state. However, his greatest failure was the battle against the powerful Tarascans in Pau, Michoacán 1479, one of the Aztecs' rare severe military defeats, costing them thousands of elite warriors and forcing them to abandon ambitions. Westward, Ahuitzotl also completed the Great Temple and erected the famous sunstone, often mistakenly called the Aztec calendar. Tizoc, Ahuitzotl's brother, became king, but was considered weak both militarily and politically. His conquests were often symbolic rather than substantial, and real power gradually tilted towards his generals and younger brother Ahuitzotl. However, he commissioned the Stone of Tizoc, carving his exploits a valuable work of art and propaganda. The Zenith of Power Ahuitzotl, 1486 to 1502, and the city where men become gods. Ahuitzotl Waterbeast, ascended, marking the peak of Aztec imperial power and expansion. The Greatest Conqueror. Ahuitzotl was a tireless military genius. He led the Aztec army further than any previous Tlatoani, southward deep into Oaxaca, land of the Zapotec and Mixtec, even crossing the Isthmus of Tehuantepec into the Soconusco, region of present-day Chiapas and Guatemala, making contact with Maya cultures. Tribute poured into Tenochtitlán from the most distant lands: jade cotton, cacao, rare quetzal feathers, jaguar skins. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent, stretching from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific, from central Mexico down to the border of modern Guatemala. The Great Temple completed, and the horrifying sacrifice 1,487 Ahuitzotls. The greatest work was completing the sixth expansion of the Templo Mayor, a colossal double pyramid, nearly 60 meters high, dominating the city skyline to grating one. Inaugurate this monument. Ahuitzotl held a sacrifice lasting 4 days and nights on an unprecedented scale. Historical sources, both Aztec and Spanish, though possibly exaggerated, recount that tens of thousands of prisoners, estimates range from 1,000 to 8,000, were led to the pyramid summit and sacrificed by rows of priests. Blood flowed in rivulets down the pyramid steps. This event was not only the supreme religious ritual to regenerate cosmic energy, but also a terrifying display of power, a deterrent to all potential enemies, and an assertion of Tenochtitlán's and Huitzilopochtli's absolute dominion. Tenochtitlán, center of the world, under Ahuitzotl, Tenochtitlán reached the zenith of its splendor and prosperity. The city, with a population likely reaching 25,000 people, was the beating heart of a vast empire. Markets like Tlatoani bustled everywhere. Boats crowded the canals carrying goods, and people from all over. Splendid palaces, imposing temples, the green expanse of chinampas stretching to the horizon. The system of dikes, bridges, and aqueducts was PASIX, reinforced. The city was proudly called Mexico Tenochtitlán by its inhabitants, where the Mexica lived, and for them it was the center of the universe, the place where men become gods. Its wealth, power, and technical organizational level made it a wonder of the ancient world. The end of a golden age. Ahuitzotl's death in 1502 closed the 15th century, the century of miraculous ascent. His successor, Moctezuma Xocoyotzin Moctezuma II, would be the last emperor of an empire at its peak, but also burdened with profound internal contradictions, the resentment of subjugated peoples under the harsh tribute system, the dependence on war to maintain the supply of sacrifices, and ominous prophecies about the end of an era. However, the legacy left by the Mexica from the 14th and 15th centuries is undeniable. From a group of exiles in a swamp, they built Tenochtitlán, a resplendent supercity, the center of a powerful empire, a testament to indomitable will, extraordinary technical ingenuity, and an imperial vision that forever shaped Mesoamerican history. That city, though buried beneath modern Mexico City, remains the greatest symbol of the illustrious Aztec civilization.